We have just got to the end of day 12 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry Tranche 3 Phase 1. That comes to the end of the live evidence of Lewis, who was someone who was spied on by a number of undercover police officers, particularly Peter Francis. I'm joined by Eveline Lubbers of the Undercover Research Group. Eveline, what did you make of what we heard?
Well, first I tried to do tweeting as well, and I
yes,
have
all
the more respect for you because I'm knackered and it's asking so much of your concentration. I hope I added something to your stuff. What do we think? Well, it was interesting to hear. You know, he was sort of at the very last moment confronted with the question, like, you know, you're spilling so much vitriol about Peter Francis. Isn't this a kind of a revenge action?
Right, yes.
Sort of, you know, like because he spied on you and he betrayed you. And he said, no.
Laboured a lot, that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he said, well, come on, you know, like I wanted to give evidence to this inquiry and I wanted to correct mistakes. And he also said, like, I am indeed saying that Peter Francis was a fantasist, but that I did not say that everything he wrote or he reported on was wrong. He said, on the contrary, he said, like, some of the stuff was right and some of it was completely over the top. So that makes it a little more difficult to judge. But and then he said that in his statement and again today that he has respect for another. I don't know he used the word respect.
No,
but he had some space for Peter Francis because he was a whistleblower. So, I mean, and he put in motion the exposure of the SDS. And
what he actually said was that he acknowledged that that Peter Francis had been a whistleblower and he had suffered from it.
Yes,
before it.
That's what
he had suffered as an undercover officer, but he had suffered from becoming a whistleblower. It was put to him that maybe that the fact that that his evidence today saying that Peter Francis was a fantasist undermined that role of him as being a whistleblower. But I think he very skillfully sort of pointed out that two things can be true. Yeah. And I mean, I would add that, like, any undercover officer who becomes a whistleblower, by definition, has to have been a fantasist first. Yeah. Because all the undercover officers were fantasists. That is like a hallmark of their deployment. Yeah. So just saying that Peter Francis is a fantasist doesn't undermine anything because they were all fantasists.
And there was another quite funny bit where Hughes was asked if the organizations he was part of were subversive, and then he said, "Well, I don't really know the definition of that." But I think that the SDS thought that an organization should be, you know, have the intent to overthrow the government. And he said that Peter Francis really soon, Peter Francis states in his statement that he only found out that they were not able to overthrow the government in any kind of way.
So this was a reference to the Harris definition of subversion, which refers in its second half to capability. Lewis pointed out that within a few days, Peter Francis or anybody would have been fully aware that there was no capability within any of the organisations he was part of to actually overthrow the state, regardless of what their ideological states were. He used the example of there are many people in this country who believe in capital punishment, and the state should bring back capital punishment. It doesn't mean that they go around executing people, and treating them as such would be ridiculous.
Yeah, he said that there's a big difference between the ideals and to be convinced of something and the practicalities of it.
Yeah.
So him being in groups that if there were 10 members active and 20 in whole, it was immediately clear that they wouldn't be able to overthrow the government, and that must have been clear to Peter Francis. He moved on to other organizations which similarly did not have the capacity. So it makes you wonder how he kept, infiltrating them for like 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that was pointed out today, and just at the end there, but by Alison actually before she left, was that Lewis was infiltrated by Peter Francis for 2 weeks. He was infiltrated for about a year. There was numerous undercover officers. He was
Trevor Morris,
Dave
Hagan,
and Peter Francis. So, but at most it adds up to a year. He had a full day of questioning today.
Yeah.
Fairly soon we'll be hearing from Alison. She'll be having 1 day of questioning. There are lots of people who were infiltrated at a very deep level for a very long period of time, who are only being questioned for 1 day. I mean, it's just something really about the priorities of the inquiry and the fact that we've got 12 witnesses, civilian witnesses before Peter Francis, people who were spied on by Peter Francis. And there was so much in the line of questioning about Peter Francis today by Don Ramble, who was the inquiry lawyer who was doing the questioning, which really questioned the credibility of Peter Francis as a whistleblower.
Yeah, so as an undercover, and then later as a whistleblower. So it's a two-step process, I guess, like undermining him as an undercover and the truthfulness of his reports sort of apparently have consequences for his trustworthiness as a whistleblower. And it's like, I don't know, we've heard more than enough about the STS and the operations of the undercover officers, and like most of it, the scandals are like worse than you can imagine. So it seems a bit sort of childish to now go and undermine the whistleblower, the only whistleblower there has been. It's like that feels like a bit, to counter the question, it feels a bit childish, a sort of an act of revenge of the inquiry to undermine his status as a...
Well, for making us do all this for the last 10 years.
Yeah. It's like, so there's something weird in there. And also, having so many witnesses about him, while Alison, who has been in a relationship or was deceived into a relationship for 5 years, with the Spycop moving in, Mark Jenner moving in with her while he was married. She's got so much to say, and her being given only 1 day is really unfair. It feels really unfair.
But I mean, also just like kind of normal as well. I mean, it's been very common for so many of the women who were deceived into long-term intimate relationships by undercover officers to be only given a very short period of time with which to answer questions. I mean, that's been the case throughout the proceedings.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
Anything else you'd like to say about Lewis today?
No, it was a bit sickening in the end that he was thanked, and it was like, apparently he's now part of the establishment, and Mitting went out of his way to thank him. It would be very interesting to discuss these matters with you further, but not at this time and place. It's like, okay, so, some of the people that Mitting really likes are given a lot of space, and being part of the establishment and apparently knowing Mitting or running into him.
I would say there are quite a lot of restriction orders in place.
Yeah. So but he does, Mitting, the chair, does deal with people who are part of the establishment different than with other people.
I mean, it's undoubtedly the case that there is a different approach for different witnesses, absolutely, and it hasn't been always particularly even-handed. I mean, I think there was a lot of interesting stuff that came out from Lewis today. He did point out that though he is like withdrawn from the political activism which defined so much of his early life, and these days, didn't feel the need to make any political statements. He claimed that he was what he did say was simply addressing inaccuracies that he saw and giving truthful evidence, which was interesting.
Yes, but it's interesting that apparently he's moved on in his life, but he's still very clear and honest about the things he did, and he's still. You get the impression that he still thinks that fascists need to have no right to be in strict. I think anybody, any right-thinking person would think the same.
Anything else you want to say about Lois? Okay, so tomorrow we'll be back and we'll be hearing first in the morning from Lois Austin, who was in one of these recap videos this morning. She was an active member of Youth Against Racism in Europe, which was the group we heard quite a bit about today. And then in the afternoon we'll be hearing from Dan Gilman, who was one of the Blacklist support group. Someone who was, as well as being spied on by Peter Francis, was also spied on by Carlo Soracchi. That's my pronunciation. I'm terrible with pronunciation, but he was the person who introduced him to Donna, who was one of the women who Soracchi deceived into a long-term intimate relationship. So I guess we'll be looking at that a bit as well. But I would imagine I'm expecting more of the same in terms of questions about Peter Francis and his credibility. Thanks for joining. Those who followed on Twitter will have seen that, as Eveline said, she was running the Undercover research account and doing a blow-by-blow tweets about what was being said. As such, it may be that she does the Twitter Spaces this evening using her own notes, which I think would be great. Please tune in for that. I'll certainly be tuning in. But yeah, I'll see you all there later on. Otherwise, see you tomorrow morning at 10. Thanks for joining.